I don't have the schedule in front of me, but I think this is our lunch break time. Am I correct?
Right.
And that's fabulous because we gave you very little time for lunch. So let me tell you about how this event is. First of all, none of our speakers are getting paid. They're all volunteers, and they did this because they're interested in engaging in these issues, and I really appreciate that. Nobody paid to come, and there's no free lunch. So I did suggest that people bring a bag lunch, but we're in the Rayburn building, where there actually is a subsidized cafeteria downstairs, so the food isn't bad. And we have a terrific panel of speakers after lunch. So we have Richard Wolf from USA Today, and we have Jonathan Salant from Bloomberg, and they're going to talk about how you can get news in the media and how to work with reporters. We have Doc Schweitzer, who's going to really walk through how do you run a campaign, how do you build your team, how do you succeed. And I'm looking at David because I'm thinking about the treaty and how hard things are on the treaty, and how, I think that we learned a lot as a community in that process. And I say that because I support the treaty personally, but I see that we need to think about how to bring people into the conversations early and build a bigger tent and really build for the long term on a lot of things. And we're going to need to do that effectively in a community on a whole range of different issues. So Doc Schweitzer is going to walk through some of those issues. Congressman Pete Sessions is our host today. I gave you his bio. He's going to be speaking. He's terrific. He has a son with Down syndrome who's also an Eagle Scout. I think some of you know he's really committed on these issues. I will also say that he has a staffer named Towner French, who, if you don't know him, he is awesome to work with, and just a real pleasure, and that they got us this room, and they've been incredibly helpful. And then we have Jim Pinkerton, who served in the Reagan administration and the first Bush administration, and was the domestic policy advisor for the ADA at that time. And I think many of you probably know that he's a Fox News analyst. So I think our comeback here time is 12:30. So we now have 1 hour.
And hopefully pets one day. Not really actually guinea pigs, but hopefully a dog one day too. I'm looking at Lucy right now. I'm thinking that, and I also have Asperger's syndrome. And my sophomore year was my biggest challenge. I lost my mobility, and I had to have 2 hip replacements. But everything's fine since. I'm going to go out to the gym and work out and make myself a little stronger, able to do more things. Just to have fun in this world. I hope to travel around a lot more, all countries. I'm very lucky to be here this summer. I really love everyone I'm working with, the wonderful people. Jennifer, the wonderful mentor and role model. And this fall I'm going to University of Delaware to start graduate school. And I got a full scholarship to go, so.
Kenny, that's awesome.
With Steve Eidelman, who I think a lot of people here know. All right, thanks, Kenny. We're along. If we just say your name and who you're with.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for putting this together. My name is Gil
Kenny.
Shamir, and I work at the Education Department.
Sorry, why don't you introduce yourself since you're standing?
Oh.
And then we'll let you in.
Hi there. My name is Ken Robinson. I work at Quantum Communications. It's an advocacy and public relations firm in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
I'm not going to stand up. My name is August Spector. I'm retired from the government. Yay. And as retirement, I have an organization called Workplace Learning Systems, and I do coaching and counseling and help for people with disabilities, especially the silent disabilities, so to speak, and in the workplace, trying to help them with jobs.
Hi, I'm Kim Maiolo. I also work with Ken Robinson at Quantum Communications in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Anil?
I'm Neil Lewis. I'm with the National Federation of the Blind, and I also need to get to the gym and work out and make myself a little smaller.
I'm Jill Houghton, and I'm with the U.S. Business Leadership Network. We bring business together around disability.
I'm Renee Tajanine, and I work at the U.S. Department of Labor's Office of Disability Employment Policy.
I'm Julia Wartenberg. I'm with the American Foundation for the Blind.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Ballas. I'm with Community Legal Services, and we represent folks with disabilities.
Hi, I'm TJ Sutcliffe, and I'm with the ARC.
I'm Kristen McKiernan, also with the ARC.
My name is Matthew Joyce, and I'm doing press for Respectability, and I used to work on Jennifer's campaign. It just happened that this whole thing came up, and I had a little accident, so it just, God works in mysterious ways, and now it's full circle.
I'm Lauren Gilbert. I do research and social media work for Respectability. I was previously a research coordinator at No Labels, and yes, and so we'll stop there.
Hi, I'm Kate Brady. I'm with NOD, which is National Organization on Disability, and I do research and communications and a few other.
I'm Deborah Brewer, and formerly with Tech Access. I created a technology company that hired people with disabilities, and now I'm on my own route global, doing a lot of consulting with governments, and a problem out there is a daughter with Down syndrome. Thank you.
I'm Doc Schweitzer. I'm a political consultant, and I'm also proud to be a member of the board of Respectability.
Co-founder.
I'm Dr. Oren, and I work on fundraising with Respectability.
I'm Paul Tobin. I'm president of the United Final Association.
I'm Hillary Steen, and I'm a fellow working with Respectability this summer.
I'm Dawn Meltzer. I'm the CEO of the National Association of Councils on Developmental Disabilities, and I'm also on the advisory committee for Respectability.
I'm Tony Stevens with National Industries for the Blind.
I'm Susie Aga. I'm a researcher with the Bureau Institute of Justice. I'm going to attempt to explain what we do. We're a nonprofit, nonpartisan think tank that does research and technical assistance on a wide variety of issues in social services and criminal justice. I've got a couple of colleagues here, and we all work primarily on victimization and underrepresented populations, including people with disabilities.
I'm Ashley Damian. I work with Susie at Bureau, so everything she said.
My name is Hannah Pincus. Today is my second day at Respectability, and I haven't had many second days, but so far this is the best.
My name is Quinn. I mainly work on project management, managing projects, and I live here in DC.
Hi, I'm Laura Walling with Goodwill Industries International.
Lisa Becker, Bureau Institute of Justice.
Hi, I'm David Morrissey. I'm with the United States International Council on Disabilities, which is a membership organization, federation of individuals, organizations, and government agencies focused on the intersection of disability and foreign affairs. And we're leading the coalition of over 600 organizations together working toward U.S. ratification of the Disability Treaty.
Hi, I'm Lindsay Barron. I just moved to DC 2 weeks ago, so I came from the University of Illinois at Chicago working at their Disability Resource Center, and I'm excited to get involved with the field here.
Hi, I'm Patrick Copeland, also with the Office of Disability and Employment Policy.
Anita Altman from New York, from UJA Federation, which in New York is a network of over 100 social service and healthcare and communal organizations, which is, working very intensely to try and mobilize our network in the whole arena of disabilities and inclusion.
Hi, I'm Kalpa Mingwa. I work with Archdiocese of Washington, D.C. in their office for people, ministry for people, special needs and people with disabilities, and the African diaspora there.
I'm Melissa Ortiz, and I'm a trailblazer. I have an organization called Able Americans. So far, it's just me. And, well, that's, I had to do something besides walk around and say that I'm Melissa Ortiz Trailblazer, which works. But the trail that I'm blazing is helping Republicans understand that A, neither side of the aisle gets it right on disability issues all the time, and B, why disability issues matter and where Republican ideology and disability issues intersect and can play very, very well together. And this is Lucy, who does seizure alert work for me and generally steals the show at any given time.
Did we get anyone, or did anybody come in late?
No, so we had somebody come in late.
Okay, yes.
Chuck Graham from the Great Plains ADA Center for the University of Missouri. I also served 12 years in the Missouri legislature and am currently a recovering politician.
So we have two distinguished speakers, Richard Wolf and Jonathan Salant. Each of them have been fixtures of the DC community of leading journalists. Really, they've covered every kind of story, and they've covered it extremely, extremely well. Richard also is involved with Autism Society, and I want to put in a big plug for them because they are our host for Respectability. They are our legal host for C3 status, and they gave us free office space. So we just couldn't love them more. And he also just spoke at their national summit and is involved in some of those issues. Jonathan Salant's mother was a special needs teacher when it was called special needs. In some cases it's still called special needs. And also past president of the National Press Club. So they have seen people come and go. In this town, interest groups, and I want to say Jonathan also happens, well, they both covered politics in the White House and everything, but Jonathan at Bloomberg covers special interest groups. So he has really seen it all. So I really look forward to your wisdom and also to the conversation that we'll have. Thanks.
Actually, my mother she started as a special needs teacher, but she then was the founder of the new interdisciplinary school for children with disabilities on Long Island, and was one of the first who got a federal grant for early intervention for infants. And one of the people she got the early intervention for was my nephew, who was born, I believe he's on the Asperger's spectrum, and he had, as an infant, had certain issues and was treated, and today he just bowled, this week he bowled like his 4th 300 games bowling. So early intervention really made a difference. I've a couple of tips that I wanted to share with you, and Rich, who used to play right field for me in Albany when I played center field and coached the reporters team up there.
Right field is where they put the people who aren't very good.
That's not true. You look like you got a couple of hits and a couple of games. And just a couple of quick tips, because I know it's a big group, and I was told that there's a lot of interplay back and forth. So we'll hear what's on your mind. A couple of rules. One is, I call it man bites dog, and with all due respect to your pet over there. Where the old saying, if dog bites man, it's not news, but if man bites dog, it is news. What's different? What's unique? What would be interesting? That goes into why should I care? What story can you tell me? The story of a person, I forget your name, who's going to University of Delaware on a full scholarship. It's a nice, that's an interesting story. It's a great human interest story for somebody. That's the type of stuff that's really interesting. The fact that we're having a meeting, not so much. One of the things, and I know, Richard will talk a little bit more about that also, is do your research. I cover politics, I cover lobbying for Bloomberg. I can't tell you how many phone calls I've gotten from people who want me to cover foreign affairs, want me to cover this book, want me to cover cooking, want me to cover all this stuff. I don't cover it. It's going to be deleted. Then they have the audacity to call me, and several times they, well, did you get our press release about this big press conference we're having? Yes. Well, I don't do that for a living. Know who your person is. Today, thanks to Al Gore inventing the internet, there is, you can just plug in Jonathan Salant, and you can find out all the stuff I cover. And on Twitter, and on Facebook, and it's muckrack and all these other things, so you know what my beat is, and you can do it for any reporter. Then again, if you don't know, so if you know somebody else, Jennifer and I know each other, we've known each other for many years, she can call me and say, we're doing this, anybody, if you think, can you put me in touch with somebody who might cover this issue? And, you know, you're more than well, it's very easy to do that. But, so if you know somebody, a neighbor, a friend who works for a media organization who may not necessarily be covering your beat, but they may know somebody who is. And my mother used to call me all the time. Who do I call on this? What arguments do I make? How do I sell this? And I could give her the tips. And here's who to ask for, and here's why you ask for it, and here's how to do that. So if you know somebody in the business or us, ask us, we'll help you out. And finally, the other one I would talk about is local angles. Again, Kenny, I don't know where you grew up, but
St. Louis.
St. Louis. There's a reporter in Washington from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. There's a reporter in Washington from the Syracuse Post-Standard. There's a reporter in Washington from the Cleveland Plain-Dealer. You have a group of people together like this. That's a local. That could be a real local story. It's not going to be on page 1 of the New York Times. It's not even going to be on page 1 of USA Today. But it could be page 1 of the the Wichita Eagle Beacon. The person's from Kansas. So think about. You have a group, a delegation. There could be a load of people. I came down as a Syracuse reporter. There was a demonstration in Washington. I was there, not to cover the demonstration, but it was local people come to Washington. And my God, it was easy. They're all wearing orange. I could find them in a crowd of 1,000 really easily. But it's just a matter of, who would be interested in this? A local boy makes good type thing. A person has whatever. So so think about that. Don't just always think about we want to be on television. We want to be on television. We want to be on the New York Times. There could be a lot of coverage in the local area. Just think of directing it to that area. And on that note, let me
Sure. Looks like I have more here, but I really don't. I'll probably repeat some of what Jonathan said since we specifically didn't coordinate. But so I broke down. Well, I should back up. I have a son with autism, so that's what brings me to groups like this. And I spent a few days with the Autism Society of America in Pittsburgh over the weekend. They needed someone to moderate. I try not to mix my professional life. I cover the Supreme Court, used to cover Congress and the White House, with my personal life, which is obviously I'm an autism advocate or an autism services and research advocate, but never the twain shall meet because USA Today doesn't do that for a living. And but that's what brings me to groups like this. In terms of media strategy, the first thing I wanted to say, when I started in this business, I had an editor, and this will date me, I started in this business in the 70s. And that was back in the days of snail mail, and my city editor, Brian Gallagher, would specifically stand over the garbage can opening the mail. Because it just it turned it into a one-step process, and mostly he didn't open the mail, it was look where it's from, just throw it out, throw it out, throw it out. Simplify. And so that applies to inboxes as well. My inbox probably has, 2,000 or 3,000 emails at any one time, and I have created 20 or 30 subfolders for the things that I really care about. We're all just inundated with emails, so don't flood inboxes with generic press releases that are going out to everybody. I mean, I guess I shouldn't say that. To some degree, you probably have to, but those are not the things that are going to catch our attention. And generally speaking, I do the same thing that my city editor in the 70s did. I kill out stuff without ever reading it because I have to, or I'd never get through my day. So they go straight into junk mail, or they go straight into deleted mail. Don't assume that press conferences and action campaigns and things like that will spark interest anymore. Without naming names, I think it's typical of like labor unions and groups like that, we're going to have a bunch of people and they're coming from all over the country and they're going to wave signs in a park. We don't care because we just don't care. That's a media event is what that is. We care about the issue. We do care about the issue. But you're going to have to come at us differently than what we want coverage of is from 10 to 10:30 we'll wave signs and give speeches, because we're not going to run back to our offices and write that from 10 to 10:30 you waved signs and gave speeches. It's the issue that we care about, not the media event. Don't try to get coverage based around I'll use autism as an example. It's Autism Month, it's Autism Year, it's Autism Day, it's Autism Moment. Those are trite. They're gimmicks. They're not the peg that is gonna. To some degree, you might get some coverage that way, but that's not, in my mind, that's not a real peg for a story. And one other thing, in terms of trying to familiarize yourself with the media, because I'm going to get to what you should do, I think. But one of the don'ts is, don't assume that you know the media outlet that you're pitching to better than they themselves do, because, and my story on that is I work for USA Today, so many people think that USA Today means everything is going to be this big, and you have to have a 50-state chart. And when they come at me and they say, or when they come at us and they say, this would be great for you because it's really simplistic, there is a way that you can refer to all 50 states in it. It's like, that turns me off right away, because we do everything. We do long-form journalism, we do investigative journalism. It doesn't have to be a 50-state chart. So that could apply to whoever you're pitching to. That could turn them off rather than interest them. So now what you should do, and Jonathan talked about a lot of this, one is personalized. Get to know the reporters or the editors or any individual at the media outlet personally. And that can be, the best thing is coffee. It doesn't have to even be a lunch. Coffee, meet halfway, just literally a cup of coffee for half an hour, face to face. It pays a million dividends, and I can't exactly explain why, except that whenever I hear in any form of a pitch, on the phone, by email, by tweet, by whatever, from someone who I've actually met, it makes a big difference. I've met that person, they took the time, I took the time, we exchanged 5 minutes of chit-chat, maybe something personal, and I think that has a big impact for years down the road. Pitch, what did I write? Pitch individual reporters and media outlets with particular stories that might work for them. We all want a story that no one else has. We don't want, and this gets back to, the rally with the signs and the speeches. We don't want to go cover the story that the AP is covering, the Reuters is covering, Bloomberg is covering, the New York Times, the Washington Post. We're all there, and we're all going to write down what the same people say, and we're all going to run back, and we don't want those stories, but we want stories that make us unique. So if you have some angle, some success story, some story of discrimination, some story of services that are needed, and you think of, this would be the way to write the story, here's some individuals that might personalize the story, and here's one reporter who we think might want this story, give it to that one reporter. Because I don't think that, and I may be wrong, I don't do your end of the business, but I don't think that quantity of coverage is necessarily as important as one good story that then gets dissipated, tweeted around, others will see it, others will get the idea, gee, that was a good story in my competitor's paper, now I'm not going to do that exact story, but I might do something similar. And so, I think that works better, to let people have an original story rather than think that people in the media are going to cover the same event. If you have something newsworthy, a report, a study, offer it to somebody first. This doesn't always work, but if you can get it to New York Times or get it to USA Today or get it to Bloomberg 12 hours, 24 hours ahead of others, you'll get one really good story. And then you might, to some degree, I won't say blank off the other people, but if you just simultaneously release it to everybody, you may get nothing. But if somebody has a scoop, if one media outlet gets a scoop on it, then they may give it really good coverage. And again, the White House does this all the time, members of Congress do this all the time. It plays both ways, so I'm not uniformly recommending it, but consider that, because that often will get you at least one front page story rather than 7 back page stories. And this gets to what I said a minute ago, but right now I cover the Supreme Court, and I'm working with a couple of people, one's from a PR agency, one's from an advocacy group, and they're working with me very slowly, without a lot of pressure, on a Supreme Court story, not about a case, not about a justice, but just an idea. And their role, the way they're playing it is, they're helping me gather information, and they're suggesting angles, and they're not putting on any pressure, and I'm saying to them, I'll probably get to this story somewhere over the summer, and they know the type of story I'll probably write, and I'm happy to have that help. And so it's just sort of a nurturing relationship. It doesn't have to be a one-shot thing where you're saying to the reporter, I sent you a press release and now I'm following up with a phone call and it's about X. It would be great to have this subject matter covered in your media outlet and you know, we're here to help. And so I think that you can get some coverage that way. I had some ideas about, I'm going to run through these really quick because these are not so much, this gets into, you know, I have a connection to disability, and so I have my own ideas on what types of stories I would like to see in the media. Serious stuff that affects the majority, not necessarily just wild success stories or horror stories, but stories that affect the middle of the road. I always think of my son as like a poster child for autism. He's not anywhere near Asperger's, and he's not anywhere near very low functioning. He's, if you want a definition of autism, it's him. And I think that, you know, so much coverage goes to the highs and the lows in any number of areas that it would just be nice to get coverage in the middle. Success stories are great. Stories that inspire are great. Stories about services that are needed are the most important. How you pitch them, I'm not sure. But jobs, jobs, jobs. Housing, education, social services. Stories that show continuing discrimination, anything like that will appeal to the media. The media, most of us are crusaders like you are. We want to solve injustices like this justice group back here, and so anything that appeals to them in terms of there is an injustice and, you know, coverage can help undo it is probably something that will work. Coverage about adults, there was a lot of conversation at the Autism Society this past weekend about how the conversation is always about children with autism, as if they never become 22.
Yeah.
And Tom Insel was there. He's the director at NIMH, and he said that 2%, I hope I'm quoting him right, 2% of all the research dollars go to adults. And that, you know, but they're adults for 3/4 of their lives. So anything I think having to do with adults, this is, again, this category is not so much how to pitch, because you're going to face, one of the reporters on a media panel said, I can't get editors to want to do stories about adults. So I'm not saying by pitching an adult story you're going to have success, but those are the stories I hope you have success with, if you can somehow pitch them. Financial issues, wills, trusts, Medicare, Medicaid, SSI, SSDI, all very important. The need for funding, how money gets spent, how money doesn't. Jonathan covers money in politics, among other things, so anything involving dollars and cents is always good. Stories that rank, excuse me, that rank the states, or stories that show locality X or state Y is really, really bad in this category. Virginia ranks 49th in group homes or whatever. Those stories work, I think. Anything about technology these days is important to the disabled in terms of the people with disabilities, in terms of whether it's physical or developmental or emotional, particularly with iPads and iPhones and everything else. And stories that I'd like to see are the ones that, you know, sort of show the positive effect that people with disabilities have on society, not just through what they do, but through the impact that, you know, I always think Jonathan affects everyone he comes in contact with in one form or another, and that there are people who, because they've met Jonathan, have become social workers or educators or whatever, and I think that stories that sort of talk about the overall effect, positive effect of people with disabilities. And so I had a couple other things, but I think I'll close and we should take some questions.
Great.